Questions for the Prime Minister. Question number 1, Mr. Peter Vickers.
This morning I presided at a meeting of the Cabinet and had meetings with ministerial colleagues and others. In addition to my duties in this House, I shall be having further meetings later today.
Mr. Vickers.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Bearing in mind the horrors which have been perpetrated in Kuwait, where thousands have been murdered and tortured, and bearing in mind also the awful nature of the weapons which are available to Saddam Hussein, does my right honourable friend agree that there can be no doubt that the implementation of all the United Nations resolutions is both a just and a necessary cause? Does he agree that Saddam Hussein has had every opportunity to withdraw from Kuwait since August, and that if a major land offensive should now be necessary, our forces will carry with them the gratitude and goodwill of the entire nation?
I very much agree with my honourable friend. I must say to him the only message that we wish to hear today is that Iraq is prepared to accept and implement all the Security Council resolutions in full and immediately. That is, of course, a message that can be given to us at any time. And as I told the House on Tuesday, only when such a message is received and has begun to be implemented can there be an end to this conflict.
Kinnock.
Mr. Speaker, would the Prime Minister confirm that within the last 48 hours, every one of the permanent members of the United Nations Security Council has made it crystal clear to Saddam Hussein yet again that if immediate and unconditional removal of all Iraqi forces were to take place, the fighting could end? Does he agree with me that it is what the whole world wants, including, had they but the freedom to say it, the ordinary people of Iraq? Knowing that, is it not obvious that of all the many cruelties committed by Saddam Hussein, the greatest would be his failure to take the opportunity, which has always existed and still exists, to avert a major land battle and the great suffering which it will bring?
It has certainly been made clear by the Allies that we do stand by the Security Council resolutions in full. As the House may know, I understand that Saddam Hussein has begun broadcasting to Iraq within the last few minutes. There's no indication yet of what he has said or, of course, what he will say, but I'm bound to say he preceded his broadcast with yet another Scud attack.
Dr. Michael Clark.
I refer my honourable friend to the answer I gave some moments ago.
Michael Clark.
Does my right honourable friend agree that Britain is an inventive nation and that we maintain a strong science base? Would he therefore join me and other members of this House, from both sides of this House, in congratulating the Royal Society of Chemistry in celebrating their 150th anniversary this year? Would he also pay tribute to the chemical industry as a whole, which contributes a balance of payments surplus of over £2,000 million each and every year to this country?
Certainly, and I'm certainly happy to do that. Indeed, only last Friday I had the pleasure of opening an innovative factory by ICI in the northwest in Runcorn that will in fact manufacture an alternative to CFCs, the very first such factory in the world. And it is the case that the chemical industry has a very impressive record, both in terms of investment in R&D and the exploitation of that investment by our own scientists. And that is, of course, the basis of industry's necessary recovery.
Ready, Ashdown.
Mr. Speaker, does the Prime Minister agree that no one, but no one, can relish the prospect of having to fight a land war in the Gulf, and that even at this 11th hour, every realistic avenue for peace ought to be pursued, but that we cannot allow ourselves to be distracted by cul-de-sacs designed to delay the freedom of Kuwait? Will he confirm that the aim of the Allies is not a temporary peace leading to conflict later, but a durable UN-based peace, and a basic ingredient of which must be recognition of the legitimacy of Kuwait?
Very much agree with the right honourable gentleman, and particularly about the points on durability and security. There really isn't any need for particular peace proposals. The peace proposals that we wish to hear are those that we have set out and agreed with our allies and others in the United Nations Security Council resolutions. That has been and remains the position. If Iraq is prepared to accept and implement those, then the conditions exist for an end of this conflict. Without that, they do not exist.
Mr. Barry Porter.
Would my honourable friend take the opportunity today of congratulating the management and workforce of the Rover Group for their contribution toward the British export drive? And would he not further agree that the figures recently announced are self-evident proof that it was a very good deal between British Aerospace and Rover for the West Midlands, for the taxpayer and for the country?
There has been a remarkable renaissance in the motor car industry generally, and that does of course include Rover.
For Lofthouse, number 3.
I refer the honourable gentleman to the answer I gave some moments ago.
House.
The Prime Minister aware that the West and South Yorkshire Police and Fire Authorities are about to set their budgets for the forthcoming year this weekend? Is he also aware that the option before them is to set their budgets in accordance with the Home Secretary's guidelines and thus maintain the present effective force, or set their budget in accordance with the Department of Environment's SAAs, which will result in the loss of hundreds of police and firemen's jobs and the consequential services? Considering the present increase in crime rate and the ever more demands on the fire service, what advice does he give them?
Authorities, this one must select its own priorities.
William Powell.
My right honourable friend will be aware, not least from his own constituency, of the wonderful work which is done by many thousands of people working for village hall committees up and down this country. Is my right honourable friend aware that, notwithstanding the marvellous efforts of our right honourable friend the member for St Albans 2 years ago to protect village halls committees from some of the worst trepidations of the EEC VAT directives, nevertheless VAT remains a serious problem for such village hall committees? And will you have a word with my right honourable friend the Chancellor and encourage him to try and find some fiscal device to make life easier for these voluntary fundraisers?
It's not readily apparent what fiscal device my honourable friend would have in mind, but if he prepares to suggest something, I'm sure my right honourable friend the Chancellor will examine it.
Kate Hoey.
Number 4, sir.
The honourable lady to the answer I gave some moments ago.
Kate Hoey.
Does the Prime Minister recall when he was a young man, he was... does the Prime Minister...
Order. The compliment.
Prime Minister recall when he was a young man, he was a councillor in Ferndale ward in my constituency. Does he realise that at this moment, this month, there is a 25% unemployment rate in Ferndale ward? Would he have time in the next couple of weeks to come and see those people, many of whom have been out of work for more than 2 years, and tell them what more can they do to get a job under this Conservative government?
Whilst I visit Ferndale Ward, which I had the privilege of representing for a period after 1968, I might also discuss with them why, so many years later, nothing has been done by Lambeth Council to improve their environment, their housing, their street cleaning, or any of the other matters of concern.
Michael Brown.
Mr. Speaker, would my right honourable friend accept that the answer to any review of the community charge is staring us in the face from Westminster City Hall? And would my right honourable friend note that council, a single-tier authority, has been able to reduce its community charge as a result of good housekeeping? And would my right honourable friend ensure that Dame Shirley Porter is made a member of the government review team immediately?
We would be very happy to have Dame Shirley's advice on that or many other matters, and I'm very happy to congratulate Westminster City Council on the community charge that they have levied. It certainly is an example to other authorities, and I hope other authorities will follow that example.
Bill Mickey, number 5.
I refer the honourable gentleman to the answer I gave some moments ago.
Does the Prime Minister agree that the concern over loss of face or part face of any leader that is leading a nation that is involved in the Gulf War pales into insignificance compared to the possible loss of life if a land war is embarked upon.
Nobody artificially wants us to see a land war if it is avoidable. The honourable gentleman should bear in mind who began this conflict, what their aims were, and what is necessary both to end it and to ensure there is a secure and durable peace that means it will not recommence at a later date. The honourable gentleman should bear that in mind.
Mr. William Cash.
Did my right honourable friend, when he saw Chancellor Kohl the other day, discuss with him the German proposals for political union, which have now been submitted to the Intergovernmental Conference? Did he agree that, in fact, these proposals were completely unworkable, and if they were put into effect, would mean the end of the Westminster Parliament to all intents and purposes?
I discussed a range of matters with Chancellor Kohl. I did not in particular discuss the particular letter that the French and the Germans put forward, though we did discuss in general terms some of the matters related to both the IGCs, the Economic and Monetary Union IGC and the Political Union IGC. And I set out to Chancellor Kohl our concerns about those matters and the policies that we have set out before this House.
And Michael.
Number 6.
I refer the honourable gentleman to the answer I gave some moments ago.
On the day when we've seen the government's own GDP figures illustrating the depth of the recession and the frightening drop in production that has been created by his policies as Chancellor and now as Prime Minister, will he reflect on the stupidity of adding 6,000 experts on training the unemployed to the queues of unemployed themselves? As we on this side have lived with the misery that was caused for millions during the recession caused by this government in the early 80s. What is he going to do to prevent a repetition of that misery for millions in the 90s?
I have an excellent record on training, as the honourable gentleman knows. Insofar as the economic circumstances are concerned in this country and elsewhere, as the honourable gentleman will know, 3 of the G7 countries are now officially in recession. 2 more have a downturn of output. 2 more have a downturn in output. And the honourable gentleman imputes too much authority to me if he thinks I'm responsible for all that.
James Hill.
Would my right honourable friend not agree with me that probably one of the biggest mistakes the Western Alliance has made is to try and treat Saddam Hussein as if he was an honourable man? His words are worthless, and I do think that when my right honourable friend telephones with President Bush next time, he may be able to tell President Bush of some of the evidence we have had in this House of the human rights that are being destroyed in Kuwait, the genocide that is taking place there, and every day must be more and more deaths for the Kuwaitis.
My honourable friend expresses a view that's held by the vast majority of members in this House. There's no doubt since August the 2nd that Iraq has broken any number of international obligations, and there must be some considerable concern about whether we can trust what is said to us by them.
Mr. Eddie Lloyden.
7.
I refer the honourable gentleman to the answer I gave some moments ago.
Lloyden.
Does the Prime Minister recall the statement he made on November the 29th, following his election to his present position, where he said, in fact, he wanted to see a country at ease with itself? Does he believe that 2 million unemployed, the continuing decimation of our health service, the imposition of the hated poll tax, and the deepening recession that we are now in, represents a climate in which people of this country can be at ease with itself? Does he now not recognise that the only way that those things can be removed is by the removal of this government?
The honourable gentleman is a class warrior who believes in conflict. I am not. That is the difference between us.
John Marshall.
I refer my honourable friend to the answer I gave some moments ago.
Mr. John Marshall.
Mr. Speaker, sir, can my right honourable friend tell the House and the country which 5 local authorities have the highest community charge which 5 local authorities have the worst education results and which 5 local authorities have the highest rent arrears?
I will be happy to write to the honourable gentleman with a detailed list of those authorities. But I think I can say to my honourable friend he will find no Conservative authorities amongst them, and he will find an overwhelming predominance of Labour authorities, almost certainly including Brent, Camden and Lambeth.
Business questions, Dr. John Cunningham.